Welcome to After the Close, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on how deals actually get done in the lower middle market. I'm Dan Stetzer, and every episode I sit down with owners who've sold their businesses and the buyers who wrote the checks to break down exactly what happened between the LOI and the bank wire. We're talking deal structure, negotiation, the emotional roller coaster of letting go of something you've built, and all the hard lessons that only come after the ink is dry. If you're a business owner who is looking to understand how other business owners have sold their business, what lessons they've learned, and how they've positioned their most important asset, this is your show. Let's get into it. Every business owner that I sit down with believes that they have two options. Door number one is to sell their business entirely. Sign the paper, hand over the keys, walk out of the parking lot with a check, and have no idea what next Tuesday looks like. Door number two is don't sell. Just keep grinding. 5 more years, 10 more years, whatever it takes to feel a little bit more comfortable. And because option one feels like a death and door number two feels like a sentence, most owners just stay in the hallway for years. But there is a third option, and that option number three is the recap. Welcome back to After the Close, stories from the other side of sold. There's no guest today, just the concept, one that I think costs owners in our market more money and potential growth than almost anything else. Here's the problem. You own 100% of something. Every dollar of your net worth is inside one company, in one industry, in one city, and the whole thing depends on you showing up. That's not a business. That's a bet you keep replacing every single morning. And the two options you've been shown, cash out completely or keep making the bet, are not the only options. Selling everything isn't the opposite of grinding. They're two ends of the same stick, and there's a lot in the middle. Let me tell you about someone who found the middle. I recently sat down with Carrie Kelsch. She built A-plus garage doors in Utah, started with small business, built in her own garage. And when she got to the end of that build, she had the exact same options: sell the highest bidder and walk, or keep going alone and see how big she could get it. She did neither, including the fact that she rejected a $30 million unsolicited offer from her account at the time. What she did instead was she merged into Guild Garage Group, which is a larger platform buying garage door companies across the country. And here's the part that stopped me. She rolled her equity, not some of it. Reporting on the deal says she took no chips off the table. She put her entire position in the bigger platform. Now think about what that actually means. She didn't sell her company for cash. She traded it. She swapped 100% of a great regional business for a meaningful part of a national one. She didn't exit her business. She exchanged a big piece of a small thing for a smaller piece of a much bigger thing. Now, not everybody would do this. Some would view Carrie's rolling of majority equity in her company as aggressive. Rolling 100% is a conviction bet, and it's not what I tell most business owners to do. But her deal makes the concept visible. So let's slow down and put some actual numbers to what this might look like. So what we're talking about is a recapitalization, a recap. It sounds like something that happens to a bank. It isn't. A recap means you sell part of your company and keep part of it. That's the whole idea. You take real money off the table today, usually stay as an owner, and when the business sells again in 4 or 5 years, bigger and worth more per dollar of profit, you get paid a second time on the piece that you kept. Now you'll hear the term, and it's an industry term, called the second bite of the apple. One thing worth calling out is that there's usually debt in these structures, and debt sits out of you, typically. The piece you keep is real equity with real risk. I'll come back to that. But first, the math. And I've kept it deliberately simple. Let's say you've got a business doing $2 million of adjusted EBITDA. Real owners earning $2 million a year. Somebody offers you 5 times that. That's a $10 million business in enterprise value. 10 million bucks. Congrats, you've done it. You're on your way out. And you're now the guy with the check trying to figure out what he is. Then there's the other option, which is same buyer, same $10 million valuation, but instead of selling all of it, you sell 80% of it and keep 20. So 80% of 10 million is 8 million in your account at closing, in this example. The other 2 million stays in the business. That's your rolled equity. Now, 5 years go by. The buyer does what buyers typically do. They put in capital, they buy a couple more competitors and bolt them onto the business they just bought. and they professionalized the back office. They had some additional infrastructure. Your 2 million of EBITDA becomes 3.5 million. And here's the piece owners sometimes miss. The multiple moves too. A $2 million company trades at 5 times. A $3.5 million company with real management and multiple locations trades at 7. 3.5 million at 7 times is roughly $25 million. You own 20% of that. So that's $5 million on the piece you already decided to sell. Add it up, and that's 8 million at closing, 5 million 5 years later, 13 million bucks from a business that was worth 10. You took 8 million off of the table on day one, cash at close, and the 20% you left behind paid you more than half of your original check all over again. Now let me argue the other side, because I don't want this to sound like a pitch. Say you skip all of that. You keep 100% and you grind for 5 more years. You grow, 2 million of EBITDA becomes 3 million. You sell at a 5x multiple because you're still a single owner, single market business. So the multiple doesn't move much. $15 million. That's more than 13. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but look at when and look at if. The grinders, 15 million exists entirely in year 5. Every dollar of it. For 60 months, your net worth is 100% concentrated in one company that requires you to be healthy, motivated, and lucky. One lawsuit, one key employee leaving with your customer list, one soft economy, any of those, and 15 million becomes 8 or 4 or a business nobody wants to buy. The recap owner had $8 million in the bank in year 1, diversified it, didn't touch it, whatever happened next with a floor underneath it. The grind might print a bigger number. It might also print a much lower number. The recap allows you to take some of those chips off the table. And if you're at 60 years old, the floor is worth more than the ceiling. Here's the thing about the grind path that not a lot of folks talk about. You're betting you could do it alone in 5 years. What a capitalized platform does in 3. Carrie could have kept grinding. She was good enough to. She looked at what the bigger machine could do with her business and decided she'd rather own part of that than all of what she could build herself. Now, if you listen to that episode, she talks about the sort of mental inflection point that she faced, the proverbial fork on the road, where she could have kept running her business at that point. It was spitting off a pretty significant amount of cash every year. But she felt like she was at a point where she could not take the machine any further on her own. And that was her main reason for wanting to roll her equity and do a recapitalization at that. Now, this isn't for everyone. There are a couple of situations where I'd say this doesn't make sense. If you want to be gone in 12 months, then you don't roll. I mean, hypothetically, you're 72 years old. You've been grinding for decades at that point. You would probably be better to take as much money off the table and sail into the sunset. If you can't survive the roll piece going to zero, then don't risk it. There is risk involved. I'm sitting behind real debt. Only roll money you can lose without it changing your life. And if you genuinely love the work and you're not tired, then go grind. Just make a decision instead of a default and get some liquidity outside the business while you do it. Can have a big impact on what actually goes into your pocket. Now, keep in mind that the entire catalyst behind this episode is not to convince owners that they should consider recapitalizing their business. That's not it at all. It's to offer and open the eyes to business owners of the different options that are available to them. Like I mentioned, through multiple conversations with business owners recently, especially, many of them think that they have to sell their business outright or continue grinding. And that is just not the case. In fact, buyers typically prefer when an owner does a recap. And why is that? Well, because the owner operator that understands this machine and probably spent the last couple of decades building it is staying on with some skin in the game. So obviously they want the interests aligned with that owner, and rolling even a minority portion of equity is a good way to do that. There's a lot less flight risk for them when there's some money tied up. So it's really nice from a buyer's perspective to have interests align with the seller of the business.
That's a wrap on this episode of After the Close. If you're a business owner thinking about your exit, or you just want to understand how deals actually get done in the lower middle market, you're in the right place. New episodes drop every other week with real deal stories, lessons from the trenches, and the stuff nobody tells you until it's too late. Head to aftertheclosepodcast.com to catch every episode. And if this one hit home, share it with a business owner who needs to hear it. Quick note, everything you hear on this show is for informational purposes only and isn't financial, legal, or tax advice. Talk to your own advisors before making any decisions on a deal. I'm Dan Stetzer. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.